Hello dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion. I'm your host Ahmed Reza. Today we are talking about the International Day of the Girl Child, a day to celebrate girls' achievements and to highlight the challenges that still hold them back. Around the world, UNICEF works to ensure that every girl can learn, grow and have a voice in shaping her own future. Dear viewers, to discuss where Bangladesh stands and what more can be done, we are joined by Ms. Rana Flowers, UNICEF representative in Bangladesh. Ms. Flowers, welcome to Jamuna Television and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for welcoming me this morning.
Thank you so much. And we have plenty of questions to ask to you. And at the very beginning, I would like to mention about an interesting thing, of course, because you have joined here in Bangladesh, especially in a very special day of Bangladesh, as we called 5th August 2024. So regarding that time, it's been over a year now. You are having quality time here in Bangladesh. So how things are going here right now, and do you face any kind of challenges?
Look, thank you, and let me start by saying what an honour it is to serve particularly the women, the children, the families of Bangladesh, and what a wonderful people, warm and generous and kind. I joined on a historic day, but one that gave me a sense of the passion and the vision that particularly the young people, those on the streets, had for the future of Bangladesh. And I hope that everything I've done since arriving is honouring that passion and that vision. I think Bangladesh is facing a very important moment in terms of the capacity, the opportunity to change and to really develop that fair, non-discriminatory land of opportunity that the young people want. And over the last year, in the very short period, you've gone through the civil unrest, there was cyclones, there were 4 major flooding events, and that was just in the first few months. So this is a country that is resilient and strong, and it's a country that deserves to thrive. I think some of the indicators that we see for children, that we see for young people, they do need attention, but I feel very positive about the change that will come. I don't know who will win the election ahead, but I feel like the people know where the country needs to go. They know the values they want to see in the country, and I feel very strongly that Bangladesh will achieve that vision going forward.
Well, thank you so much for talking about the youth power, of course, and we are positive, of course. So let's talk about a different thing. And you know, UNICEF works closely with adolescent girls across the world. So have you noticed any positive changes or progress in their lives recently?
Absolutely. Globally, there have been several positive developments for girls across many countries, and they include much improved health, much improved survival rates for girls. We've seen that more girls are finishing school, and that's the same here in Bangladesh. We recognise that more girls are going on to tertiary education. We've seen more girls step into critical leadership roles where they're role models for the younger girls who are coming through. We've seen the girls be able to speak up more and to be able to start to raise their voice about protection issues and safety in their communities. We've seen improvements, I would say, in almost every country, but we've also seen gaps within countries. And most often that relates to marginalised populations, wherein the girls tend to still fare not so well in comparison to boys in those communities.
So you have plenty of experience to work in Vietnam, China, Cambodia, Mongolia, and many places like Australia and United Kingdom as well.
Yes.
So apart from that perspective, I mean, do you see any challenges here in Bangladesh, especially the girls they are facing, especially in Bangladesh?
Yeah, look, I think
and what kind of challenges it is?
Yeah, girls in Bangladesh, but also in other countries. I would group them, starting with maybe the economic barriers that girls can face, and here in Bangladesh, it relates to poverty. So girls who are growing up in families that live in poverty, they're less likely to be prioritized if there are boys in the families. They're less likely to be kept in school. They're even less likely to be taken to healthcare. So that's one of the key areas that we see barriers. I think the second area that I find most troubling, and this is also in many countries, is gender-based violence. And over the last year alone, we have seen disturbing increases in the degree to which women and girls in this country are the victims of sexual violence, of assaults, of threats, of online abuse as well. And that's a troubling trend because that can cause, particularly for our young girls and our children, that can cause them to move within themselves, to sort of become cocooned and not have the confidence to step out. And when I speak to a group of young girls and they talk about a fear of being outside, no society should have half their population fearful of being on the streets. I think a third area are the education barriers. Even though we see quite good parity in terms of education here in Bangladesh, there are barriers to girls doing science, doing math, being encouraged to stay in schools. We know when there is a crisis, a natural disaster, for example, girls are often the first to be pulled out of school. They have education loss as a result. They're asked to stay home, to work, to support the family in ways that has a larger impact in terms of the education loss and their future economic development. In terms of health and nutrition, girls also face different challenges to boys, and I worry about girls who don't have access to sexual reproductive health advice and support. That period of adolescence is this incredible brain development, and it's also a moment to really think about nutrition.
Exactly.
So making sure girls are getting the right variety of diet, that we have them receiving micronutrients, all essential for girls' development and for them to turn into strong women, and that's a bit of a gap at the moment here in Bangladesh. And then you have, because of the fact that Bangladesh is very high on the climate change impact and the countries affected. And in fact, I don't even call it climate change anymore. It's a climate crisis. It's already happening. It's not changing, it is with us. And there we see girls particularly impacted. And we can measure that. So we can measure the impact, not just on their nutrition and health, but we can measure it on the fact that sexual violence goes up. We see an increase in child marriage here in Bangladesh whenever there is a severe storm, etc. So for girls, they face different barriers to boys. They face societal norms that hold them back, and they have to be extra resilient, extra strong. And you see it in the women who have faced those barriers and who have achieved, and we will see it in the girls, but we need to do more to support them and empower them.
Indeed. So there is some positivity that at least you are thinking in that way when you raise the question or voice against gender-based violence, and to make sure about the proper education. And also, if you talked about the climate crisis in Bangladesh and climate impact in Bangladesh. So regarding that perspective, and you have worked with many girls especially, so did they share any kind of challenges or crisis when I talk about the education, health, and also empowerment?
Yeah, look, I think when I speak with girls, I still, after decades of working, I can still get goosebumps. I can still be stunned and amazed by their thoughtfulness, their capacity to consider the challenges that they face, but also to not be stymied by that, but to identify solutions. And I think what's beautiful about children and young people in general is they want to be a part of the solutions. They want to be able to have their voice heard. And so when I speak with girls, I think the first challenge is there aren't always spaces and safe spaces for them to speak about their challenges, for them to use their voice, to practice using voices. You know, we want to have responsible citizens, but unless we educate and train children and young people in that responsibility, then they don't magically gain that when they become adults at 18. So the more we can give space, allow young people to talk, learn what we call soft skills for employment, which include negotiate an issue. They won't always get it right, but they have to learn how to debate and how to adjust their thinking and how to listen also to other people. I think the girls also frequently speak about, and as I said, the fear on the streets, the fear of going out, the abuse, and that's also verbal abuse that they suffer, and that's increasing. That for me is an issue of education. It's about parents doing better to raise our boys as well, to respect each other and to not behave in inappropriate ways. The girls also talk about access to services. If, you know, one of the major reasons girls don't go to school or don't go to school often enough or regularly relates to simple things like, are there toilets and running water in the schools? And we can even correlate a girl who hasn't been able to go to school because she has her period, for example, with the learning loss that we can see reflected in assessments and examinations. So the goal has got to be to make sure that the spaces where girls need to be operating in the schools, in the health facilities, etc., are gender sensitive and that they facilitate that kind of support to girls. One of the issues that I'm hearing more and more from young people, and this, I've seen this in all of the countries in the last, particularly in the last decade, relates to online abuse. And UNFPA have just done a study of violence against women, and they've very clearly signalled the group suffering the highest level of violence are the 15 to 19-year-olds. So we need to empower those girls. But also the fact that the online abuse is increasing, and about 46% of it is perpetrated by people not even known to the girls. So I don't think parents realise that their children are sitting in their rooms with their computers, with their phones, etc. And they are being trolled and abused. Their self-esteem is dropping, their confidence drops. And I literally see these girls as being trapped in a cocoon because they have lost the capacity to use their voice, to let people know how much they're suffering. And that relates to a mental health risk that we need to be very conscious about in our young people. And we need to be thinking about how to better protect. The companies, the internet companies, the social media need to be more accountable for protecting our young people and particularly for thinking about the abuse that young women are suffering.
Indeed, it was a new concern, of course, the online abuse. And just a few days back, we have got the information from UNFPA. They have published statistics just before a few days back. Just when I'm just talking about the new concern, and probably you have visited a couple of places here in Bangladesh within this tenure of your journey. So what kind of experience you have gathered from that visits?
Look, I think everywhere I've gone, and I've spoken to the young people, girls and boys, there is that passion for change. There's a passion for embracing the opportunities that Bangladesh will offer. Okay. But there is also some uncertainty. I think young people do speak about integrity in ways that matter. They speak about corruption. They speak about the kinds of changes they want to see for their country. I think for girls, in particular, but not only, the issue of child marriage is a significant concern. You know, a country that has 51% of its girls being married before the age of 18, I mean, that's deeply concerning. Bangladesh is one of the worst countries in the world. And I talk to the girls about what they feel drives child marriage, and obviously we see the connection with disasters, we see the connection with financial issues, and they talk about the fact that the parents want to protect their dignity. I understand that, we all do for our girls, but actually a disempowered girl is so much more vulnerable than a girl that we have taught to stand firm, to be aware of her surroundings, to identify risks, to raise her voice. And the fact that, you know, that percentage of girls being pushed, and it is pushing, into child marriage, nationally 51%, but when I go to some areas it goes as high as 75% and above. And I think if parents realise they're pushing girls not into a happy marriage for life, but they're pushing them into a situation where we're seeing high rates of mortality of the girls, we see the highest rates of violence, we've seen fertility go up, but neonatal death go up, we've seen, as I said, the girls dying in greater number, and we see the violence against girls. I don't think as a parent that is honouring their dignity. I don't think as a parent that's honouring their possibilities, and it's really cutting them off from any future that they might hope to have. So for me, child marriage is one of the key areas that the girls frequently, no matter where I go, will talk about. And they'll talk about how they themselves try and work with their peers, in teams, getting their parents involved to help, to try and stop child marriage happening, particularly for the very, very, very young girls in this country. Violence, as I said, is absolutely critical, but I think the incredible strength and the strength of spirit, the strength of dignity that I see, I mean, it's just really, for me, it's really empowering and really an affirmative spirit.
Yeah, thank you, Rana, for sharing such insightful words. But when I'm having the information and words from you, I'm feeling so low. I don't know about the information as because when I'm seeing the Bangladesh, that how miserably we are going, in particularly when I'm talking about the girls' right and about their situation as well. But right now I have to take a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk a short break. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Opinion. I'm here with Ms. Rana Flowers from UNICEF. Rana, welcome back once again, and we are talking about different kind of perspective. And right now, you know, you have made so many young people in Bangladesh. So let's talk about their energy and ideas, especially how can young people, especially the girls, take part in decisions that affect their life.
Thank you. Yes, and it is one of the key asks that children make when we meet with them. They want to be a part of decision-making processes. They want to have their voice heard. And our work is based on the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which Bangladesh signed on to back in 1990. And where they understand that they don't have all of the ideas yet necessarily fully baked, but they have opinions. And if we listen to those opinions and help them shape them, that is part of them developing that capacity to influence policy in the future. I think where you have a society that doesn't listen to children in general and girls in particular, you know, you end up with people who can throw stones from the sidelines, but you don't end up with a population who's engaged in sensible discussion and that is engaged in really trying to find the solutions and being a part of those solutions. So they absolutely want to be able to do that. And I think schools and the way the curriculum is structured would be one of the barriers currently in Bangladesh. I'm hopeful that we will move to a more progressive curriculum in the future. And certainly when I speak to employers, they are also telling me they cannot get the skills that they need in young people. And those are skills that are not memory. They're not the sorts of things you get by repetition. These are the skills you get by practice. And they're what we call soft skills or employment skills, which include that capacity to listen, that capacity to discuss, to work in a team, to think about a problem and analyse the problem, to be able to ask the right questions. And as we move down that path of AI changing our workplaces, that capacity to ask the right questions becomes even more important. So the first real requirement of girls is that safe space to be able to practice those skills. And if we can get it into the education system, what UNICEF would call it is social and emotional learning skills. Girls tend to be better at communication areas than our boys. So we also have to develop those skills in boys, because otherwise they will be locked out of employment in the future. But they need to learn to negotiate. They need to learn to debate. They need to learn to do that without resulting in conflict. Because whether it's marriage or whether it's in government, you don't need conflict, and it's unhelpful to getting to a result. So girls want to be heard, and they don't want decisions made for them. They want to be a part of making those decisions and contributing to the discussion. And we can do that by creating spaces. We do it within the curriculum, or we do it through after-school programs, or we do it through support centres. So we can talk about the various hubs and approaches that we use to build skills of girls. But it starts at home. And it starts at home with parents putting down their phones, sitting at the dining room table and actually having a conversation and asking the children at the table for their opinion, listening to their opinion, reflecting, not criticising, but just reflecting, getting them to refine how they think, how they present. And when parents do that, and if they insist on doing one meal a day where they sit together and discuss without the phones, without the television, without the distractions, you'll see a real difference. I know with my own children, when we had an issue that I knew they didn't want to discuss particularly as adolescents, then we had what we called a family meeting. Everyone could put items on that agenda for our dinner that night, and we discussed openly what the issue was, the different perspectives on it. We had rules. You couldn't raise your voice, you can't get angry. You had to learn to present and make sure you were being heard. And I think if I can encourage parenting skills that help do that, I think that'll be important for girls to feel that empowerment. I want girls to feel empowered because I also think behaving like a victim, being fearful, attracts attacks. And there was a very interesting study done in different countries where they asked prisoners of violent crime to watch videos, just people walking down the street, Watch the women walking down the street and pick who you would victimize, who you would rob or attack. And all of them, all of the prisoners, individually doing this exercise without others in the room, they all picked the same women. And it was the women who walked without confidence, who didn't look around and be aware of their surroundings. And I want parents to help their girls feel empowered and to be aware. I want them protected, and it starts with parents doing a better job of giving girls those skills. The mothers, the women, fabulously empowered women in Bangladesh, and we need those role models. So we need the women in companies, we need to see more women in government, in the political parties we need to see more women, because that is a role model for young girls, but it also reflects that we think differently. Women and men think and approach a problem differently. Neither is 100% right, and by coming together we always get a better solution. I think the final area that young people need more, and I met recently with a group of girls who were scouts, very capable. Mm-hmm. And when you think about adolescent development, you want young people to have competencies. We talk about the 5 C's, but it's competencies and confidence, etc. Mm-hmm. So get young girls involved in groups and also in sport. Because we think of sport as being competitive and etc., but actually sport builds some of the most important skills for the world of work of any of the initiatives that we can introduce for young people. And
friendship as well.
Absolutely, be connected and not on your phones, because young people have lost the skill and I see it in my children, of being able to make friends, to have that initial hard conversation. Adolescence is a period of insecurity at the best of times, but we need to create spaces where young people have that opportunity. And one of the things I always say to girls is boys and men are very good at having a network, having a professional network. Women, not so good. So think about who your network is. Nurture that network. Build that network, because when you support each other, you're stronger.
Yeah, indeed, and always we love to say that opinion matters. So regarding that perspective, I would like to say to you that such a beautiful way you have described that why family meeting is so important, especially for bonding and to solve the problems as well.
Because you're teaching them to negotiate.
Yeah. Exactly.
And if you don't have that, they're not going to develop it later. That's the tragedy. This is such an important period for the brain to connect, for the confidence to build, for young people to feel that they are doing something that is valued. That's gold.
Well, I have a supplement question regarding that.
Sure.
So, we have got an example from our young people, and they have made an example in last year regarding their decision-making process and level for shaping the new Bangladesh, for shaping new era of Bangladesh. So do you think that government, the civil society or the family, they do listen properly our young people?
The honest answer would be no. I do not think that is happening. And look, it's a massive generalisation. There'll be families doing a fabulous job. And I think no one becomes a parent to ignore their children. I think that we get busy, we get distracted, we move into our own little cocoons in terms of social media, etc. And I watch families in restaurants, and the parents are on their phones and the kids are on their... I mean, one rule I think that's critical is put your phones away whenever you're at a table together, because you really need to be talking to each other. So do governments listen sufficiently to children and young people? No, they do not. And I've watched it, whether it's in the United Nations General Assembly, whether it's in a classroom, the range of spaces where when a young person speaks, because they see the problem from their angle, they always have insights that we haven't thought of. And instead of prejudging and assuming they're young, they're not quite developed yet, actually, that's exactly the voice we need to be listening to. But it's also the fact that when you listen to them, you honour them.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally believe dignity of every child is what we should be aiming for. But you also empower them to think through their role in the solution. So you're creating a sense of accountability in children. And I think that accountability, those values become super important when they become adults.
Right.
Because that's where you get that sense of cohesion and an approach that will change. Do the private sector listen to children and young people? Not often enough. And when they do, they also get an insight into their product, into their marketing, into their approaches. Now, sometimes that's used for ill gains. So, you know, the overly sweet, sugary drinks, for example,
right,
know exactly how to target children. Those who want to promote cigarettes know exactly how to target children. And that's where we also as adults need to be careful to make sure that the children are protected. But I think where I've seen the private sector promote youth, and one of the things we're doing here is looking at skills for young people. You cannot thrive as an economy if everything is low-skilled labour. You really want to have a Bangladesh that thrives on a multitude of skills. And so being able to introduce very successful skill programs, only successful if they work with the private sector. A, in their design, but B, then in allowing the young people to practice their skills. And it's interesting to watch young, not so confident young people go into a company, to watch old, not so confident managers of that company doubting whether this is going to work, and watching them both come together in a way where you can see the change happening. And you can see the value and the respect being built. So certainly for the private sector, they're learning to open these spaces. I think the government as well. I've just looked at the nationally determined commitments of the government of Bangladesh to climate and the climate crisis. And there they are creating a mechanism for young people to have a voice. Because what you don't want is, you know, disgenuine approaches to bringing young people in, pretending you're listening, actually telling them what you want them to say. That's not participation. And I've seen that in other countries go very badly.
Okay.
But giving them a space is critical.
Yeah, sure. And I would like to know about your activities which making difference here in Bangladesh when I'm talking about the girls' right and their confidence and their empowerment as well. But before that, I have to take a short break. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a short break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back as early as possible. Welcome back to the final part of Opinion. We are talking about girls' empowerment and children's right with Ms. Rana Flowers from UNICEF. Welcome once again, Rana. And before going to break, before having a break, we had a question to you that what UNICEF is doing here in Bangladesh to empower the girls of Bangladesh.
Yeah, look, particularly for adolescent girls, it's an absolutely critical time. It's a period of the brain development. It's a period where nutrition matters. Lots of health issues start to come to the fore. So what's critical in that dynamic is that the girls have access to the services and that those services are gender sensitive. It's also critical that we keep girls in schools. Here in Bangladesh at the moment, we're actually starting to see that boys are dropping out more in secondary than the girls. What I see is that boys make a choice to go for 10 taka today, but what they're actually choosing is poverty for life. And we have to do better at keeping boys and our girls in schools right through upper secondary so that we're getting the skill set that we need for the future. So a lot of our programs are designed, A, to ensure that access is there, but they're also designed to help build skills and give girls access to networks and spaces that allow them to practice those skills. So let me mention a few of those. One, and I visited it in the 𝗔𝗯𝗃𝗁 slum quite recently, is what we call a child protection hub. It's where we have primarily girls, but we also see boys coming in and wanting to be a part of the change for their community. They come in, it's a safe space. They can access all sorts of support. They get mentors who come in and help grow some skills, but they themselves are empowered also to be change makers in their community. So they help the younger people, they design programs and activities for children, they talk about child marriage and go to families and talk them out of going along that path. So it's a fascinating group to visit, and you see the young girls just looking with such awe at these older 14, 15-year-old girls, and it's just beautiful to see that dynamic in place. We want to address violence, so really having that kind of space is critical. I think the second one that I really enjoy is Sport for Development. That's a UNICEF name, but it's really about involving, and again it's for boys and girls, but we do girls separately, involving them in the power of sport. And that's about the strategic thinking, teamwork, skills that you develop through sport. If you watch a game of football, it is about communication. It's about knowing and respecting and trusting your team members, but it's about strategy. It's also about falling down and getting up again. And if our kids don't learn to fail, if they don't develop that growth mindset of every little failure, every little fall absolutely makes me stronger, then we're in trouble. I think the third one is really looking at health and nutrition and how we make that more accessible. I think the country's moved away from having strong primary health care, particularly in rural and poor urban areas, and we need to address that head on and make sure that our girls have access. We did a major vaccination for HPV, which
ongoing.
Results in cancer in women later in life. Amazing response. So, you know, you can reach the girls and you can get them to respond. And then I think the fourth one is skills and development. Absolutely, not the skills I was taught, which included touch typing and sewing. Not that those aren't important and I don't still use them, but these are skills for work. We need the girls also to have that opportunity.
Yeah, Rana, you are doing from your part many things, but we as a Bangladesh, we are having a different kind of crisis, especially in Bangladesh. Like we are having economical crisis, we are having political crisis. So apart from all national priorities, do you think that girls' issues still get the focus they deserve?
I think the challenge for girls is there aren't enough voices, female voices, in any of these decision-making spaces. And if you don't have women in the room, if you don't have girls in the room, you don't take them into consideration. Just ask any woman about the number of bathrooms that are built in an airport. When men design that, you always end up with a bad result for what the ratio of bathrooms should be. I don't see that girls' issues are addressed. I think we assume children are children and everybody's the same, and actually I can tell you from the evidence and the data, you think about them differently. You think about your response differently. You want them to go with opportunities, dreams, same direction, but the way you nuance that and the way you apply that is different. And if girls in this country don't have access to STEM learning, the science, the technology, the math, the engineering learning, you won't also have that balance later in those industries.
Indeed, and when we are talking about the crisis, we have another significant crisis, especially in Bangladesh. We have a climate crisis, as you mentioned before. So, you know about this crisis as well, and how is UNICEF adding climate resilience to its education and child protection programs? Yeah,
look, I think the climate crisis is challenging us all. It challenges the population more than we appreciate. The fact that it reshapes lives, it causes massive internal migration. We've got increases in abuse and child marriage, etc., that always happen when there is a natural disasters. And it has to begin with understanding the role that the social sectors play in preparing for every disaster. Bangladesh is well practiced, actually well respected for its response to flooding. And it's only those very severe, which we're going to get more severe and more frequent in terms of the storms, that can challenge. But we don't even now, we're not preparing through our schools. There is no climate change education.
Yeah.
We're not introducing laws that say every school must be climate resilient, climate smart. We found last year in the flooding that hospitals weren't prepared. So all of the supplies were in the basement, all of the supplies were lost because of the flooding. There are simple things that can be done for the community. So in terms of education and child protection, what we don't recognise sufficiently is whenever there is a natural disaster and schools are used as shelters, etc., we have massive education loss. So that time out of school, we lose children from the education system. This country cannot afford to lose children from their education system. Yeah. We also see, as I said, the increase in child marriage and in violence and in the vulnerability of women and children in emergencies. All of these need to be recognised with support systems, safe spaces created, etc. And I think we also haven't done, I don't think we've done enough to identify actually the immediate impact of the climate crisis on women and children. There is always an increase in stunting of children, in wasting of children. Women, preterm pregnancy problems, complications in pregnancy, diarrheal disease, cholera, death, uterine infections, skin diseases. All of these are a result of the more dramatic climate events that are happening in Bangladesh. And as a government, as a community, we need to come together to think more about how we prevent those and then how we respond to them.
So, Rana, how can local media and youth groups work with UNICEF to bring out the voices of children affected by climate changes?
Yeah, look, I think there are several ways. UNICEF has quite a wide following on its social media, but that's not enough.
Yeah.
We have surveys that we do of young people, also reaching millions and millions, tens of millions of young people to hear their voice. That's not enough. We have to find ways through the schools, because schools are convening areas, but also through the out-of-school programs that we manage. Programs that are either designed to try and get the kids back into school or into skills training. And we have to find ways of not just focusing on the curriculum areas that they need to learn, but also listening to young people and helping them to be a part. In countries, we can have child parliaments, we can have sub-national governments, have a consultation with young people. I've seen somewhat arrogant local government folk, not in this country, in other countries, you know, walk into the room assuming this would be a complete waste of the time and them spending extra time in the room because they were so fascinated and they were learning. So I think that commitment has to be more than just words. You have to take actions, make the space, have a mechanism that is an ongoing one that creates that avenue for young people's voices to be heard. And the media can do that better. We've trained young journalists to go out and interview. They're absolutely brilliant. But again, the media can also bring that stronger focus on children's rights.
Exactly.
Because when we talk about children's rights and we talk about the areas that we know fuel development, and when you fuel development, you have strong development, you also have economic growth. The media has such a tremendous role. And we see, you know, we see negative media reports, but not the empowering, positive engagement of young people as much as we need to.
Indeed, and thank you, Rana, for joining and for sharing such insightful insights with us from Bangladesh perspective and about the children's rights as well and their empowerment as well. It's my final question to you. Would you mind to share any message for the Bangladeshi girl?
I would.
Yeah,
can I do it straight to camera?
Yeah, so you can use this camera.
Thank you very much. Look, I really want to reach out to every girl, and I want to emphasize your dignity, your voice, your dreams, they all matter. And I want to encourage you also to have what I call a growth mindset, which is to embrace the obstacles, because there will be many. We all, as women, have faced obstacles. I want you to embrace those and to see them as a challenge to be overcome. Because when you face down your obstacles and you bounce back, even when you fail and you get back up, that's what makes you stronger. That's what gives you the skills for the next challenge that you'll face. So raise your voice. No one needs silence. We need voices and we need solutions, and I really count on you all to be the future leaders.
Thank you, Rana. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and time with us. Indeed, thank you so much for joining as well.
Thank you very much for the time and for the privilege.
Oh, thank you. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today's opinion. Thank you for watching. See you next time.